Starting now on Fox 4 News at 9. Police say this young man's Camaro ran a red light and caused a fiery crash that killed a young mother and her daughter. A local lawman is behind bars tonight accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl. Another video of Osama bin Laden has surfaced, but when was it taken? Plus a final case from the Tex Files, the haunting mystery of the Phantom Killer of Texarkana.
Broadcasting live for Dallas, Fort Worth, and all North Texas, the news station. This is Fox 4 News at 9.
A North Texas sheriff's deputy finds himself on the wrong side of the law, the suspect of an alleged sex crime. Good evening. I'm Shirley Washington.
And I'm Richard Ray. The Tarrant County Sheriff's Deputy is accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl. Melissa Cutler has a story that you saw first on Fox.
40-year-old Albert Adrian Mitchell of Fort Worth, the Tarrant County deputy, a man used to putting other suspects behind bars, was arrested, cuffed, and booked accused of a felony involving a 17-year-old girl.
Mr. Mitchell made several unwanted sexual advances toward the victim, ultimately holding the victim down and sexually assaulting her.
Police say the two met Wednesday at a fast food restaurant in Azle where the girl worked. Police say Mitchell made some unwanted sexual advances towards her and she turned him down. Police say 2 days later, Mitchell showed up at her home where he allegedly sexually assaulted her.
According to police, this is what happened. When they met, Mitchell feigned friendship. Police say the girl told him where she lived in Pelican Bay. He paid her a visit.
He had made an advanced sexual advances one time prior, but they wasn't real strong, so she didn't think nothing about it.
She said no. He left. Then police say Mitchell returned the next day, Friday, making stronger advances this time. She again refused. That's when police say the assault began.
He was coming over just to visit, just to talk, and he was making sexual advances then. She tried avoiding it, going to another room, and then he followed her back into the living room where the offense occurred.
Police say Mitchell says the sex was consensual. Police arrested the suspect Sunday at the Tarrant County Jail, where it's normally his job to do intake or book prisoners into the jail. Mitchell will stay at the Westworth Jail until his case is presented to the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. If Mitchell doesn't post bond, he will head to the Tarrant County Jail, where he will join some of the very same people he once helped escort into a prison cell.
Police say Mitchell did not resist arrest. He will be arraigned on Monday. In Fort Worth, Melissa Cutler, Fox 4 News.
A U.S. Special Forces soldier was killed after coming under enemy fire near Bagram in eastern Afghanistan. A military spokesman says there were no other American casualties in the firefight, which started when suspected al-Qaeda or Taliban forces engaged in a battle with U.S. forces. The name of the soldier is being withheld pending notification of family.
A British newspaper has released new video of Osama bin Laden. The Sunday Times says an Islamic news agency in Britain obtained it from a Pakistani intelligence official. Bin Laden's supporters claim that parts of the 40-minute video were taped in March, but the newspaper says the video does not provide enough clues for it to be dated. Vice President Dick Cheney says he's almost certain that terrorists will strike again in the United States.
In my opinion, the prospects of a future attack against the United States are almost certain. I'd like to be able to say it's never going to happen again, but I don't think anybody who's really looked at it can say that. We don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or next week or next year, partly because I think we're having some success at disrupting the organization and making it more difficult for them to carry out their operations.
Mr. Cheney advised Americans to remain calm but on alert. We'll have more from the Vice President later in this newscast.
The FAA warned the airlines 5 months before September 11th that terrorists could try to hijack or blow up a U.S. plane. A memo dated April 18, 2001 states airline employees should be on high alert because some active terrorist groups are known to plan and train for hijackings and construct sophisticated bombs. The federal government may create a hotline aimed at stopping hijackers. The toll-free number could be used by passengers to call for help in case of hijackings or other emergencies. The plan is set to go before Congress Monday.
For the first time since September 11th, airport executives from all over the country met to discuss security changes. The conference was held at a Dallas hotel, and Fox 4's Brandon Todd was there.
I'm not a legal person. I just go through the door.
From doors that monitor human movement to fingerprint identification and facial imaging. This is the latest security technology coming soon to an airport near you.
The security that you see at airports today is better than it was 9/11. It's getting better all the time, and it's going to continue this way.
This is the largest meeting of the American Association of Airport Executives since the September 11th attacks. 2,400 industry professionals will consider security measures like hidden cameras.
Right into the door here we have a frontal camera that gives a nice shot of someone's face as they walk through the door, as well as a profile camera.
Or even face scanning technology used to keep track of dangerous criminals or possible terrorists.
If the operator determines that there is a match, then law enforcement would be dispatched.
This is something already being tested at DFW Airport.
Some of the applications of the biometrics, the technology that allows for people to identify other people, whether it be employees or others, are things that we're looking at. We're testing that out at our airport as well.
Executives from U.S. airports will also hear from their counterparts overseas regarding their policies on scanning every piece of luggage for bombs. Even in the face of recent warnings about terrorist attacks, industry leaders say it's a constant challenge to walk that fine line between tight security and passenger inconvenience.
To give you an idea of what the future of airport security could look like, some vendors will showcase technology that uses thermal imaging to scan a passenger, monitor their blood flow, and determine if they are telling the truth.
A mother and her 1-year-old daughter are dead after police say someone ran a red light and slammed into their car. The fatal accident happened overnight at the corner of West Keys and Southampton. As Fox 4's Rebecca Aguilar reports, police say the driver who caused the crash tried to get away.
This is what was left of the Ibarra family car after police say it was hit by a Camaro that went through a red light at the corner of Keys and Southampton in South Dallas. The Camaro landed inside an abandoned gas station. Police say bystanders pulled 30-year-old Carlos Ibarra and his 5-year-old son Santana and 11-year-old son CJ out of the burning car. But 29-year-old Leona Ibarra and her 1-year-old daughter Ariel could not be saved. Relatives say Leona and her family were on their way home from their grandmother's around 1 o'clock Sunday morning when the accident happened. Investigators say the Camaro was traveling at a high rate of speed when it crashed into the Chevy and into the building. Police say the driver of the Camaro and the passenger took off after the crash. Police say they were able to find the driver of the Camaro because a passerby had picked up the driver and another person right after the accident happened. Well, that person who gave the two a ride came back to the scene to tell police where they could find the driver of the Camaro. The driver's face was covered with blood from his injuries when police took him back to the accident scene. Police aren't saying if they suspect the driver was under the influence of drugs or alcohol when the crash happened. Investigators also plan to question the driver's passenger to find out more. Leona's husband and son were taken to Parkland Hospital's burn unit. Relatives say they were a tight-knit family. The mother and daughter's deaths have left the Ibarras in shock. The driver of the Camaro was treated for his injuries at the scene. He may now face vehicular manslaughter charges. Rebecca Aguilar, Fox 4 News.
An I-team investigation uncovers convicted felons with serious offenses driving DART buses.
A 6-month investigation turned up more than 200 convictions for everything from drugs and drunk driving to assaults. I-team's Becky Oliver joins us now with a preview of her special report.
Good evening, guys. There's been a lot of emphasis on criminal background checks recently, and since September 11th, much of that focus has been on the transportation industry. But our investigation found a policy at DART that some believe is putting the public's welfare at risk. Eliza Johnson was convicted in 1993 for possession of a controlled substance and unlawful use of a weapon. In 1998, his probation was revoked and he was resentenced. DART hired him last year to drive a bus. And Eddie Lewis was convicted of possession of cocaine in 1997. His probation was revoked in 1998 for testing positive for cocaine. DART hired him last year.
The great majority of our 3,000 employees certainly do not have any criminal infractions.
Ben Gomez is a DART vice president. He says DART checks motor vehicle records every 2 to 3 years. And the last check was about a year ago.
Our motor vehicle record does not show any criminal convictions.
So you're not pulling up criminal background checks on your employees at all?
Not as a matter of course.
Now, coming up tomorrow at 9 o'clock, find out why DART isn't running regular criminal background checks on employees. We will show you what other offenses we found, and we'll tell you how other cities are keeping the criminals from getting behind the wheel. Becky Oliver, Fox 4, I-Team.
New Coast Guard statistics show that boating in Texas is 6 times more dangerous than California or Florida. I'm James Rose. A live report from Lake Ray Hubbard is just ahead.
These American women hope to be the first all-female team to reach the top of Mount Everest. Coming up, we'll tell you whether they made it.
And new research says that getting too much sleep could be deadly, but some sleep experts strongly disagree.
And I'm meteorologist Ron Jackson. After tying a record low temperature of 50 degrees this morning, it turned out to be a pretty nice day. We climbed up to an official high of 71, 80s out in West Texas, 88, the high in El Paso earlier this afternoon. Next chance of rain, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about 80-degree temperatures returning. All that coming up a little bit later.
Good evening, I'm Mike Ducey. Stay with us for Sports Sunday coming up tonight at 10. A picture-perfect day for the final round at Colonial. A couple of veterans in the hunt on the final day. Tom Watson, one of them. Nick Price, the other. Could Price hold on today? We'll have highlights and the post-round coverage with reaction. Tiger passed up Colonial to play in that big money event in Germany. We'll update his status and hear from Mr. Woods tonight. And also coming up,
being the first blind person to try all these new things.
Climbing Everest without the benefit of sight. A story you won't want to miss tonight on Sports Sunday at 10.
You're watching Fox 4 News. Richard Ray, Shirley Washington, meteorologist Ron Jackson, only on the news station, Fox 4.
Welcome back. Boating is a favorite pastime of summer, but it also can be a deadly one. It is National Safe Boating Week in Texas, and the Coast Guard wants to make sure that you do not become a statistic. Fox 4's James Rose is live now at Lake Ray Hubbard with that story. Hi, James.
Hi, Richard. You know, these new statistics are indeed disturbing when you talk about boating in Texas. In fact, these numbers suggest that if you're involved in a boating accident in Texas, there's a nearly 25% chance that someone's going to die. Dallas police patrolling Lake Ray Hubbard are doing what they can to prevent tragedies. Whoa. Look at that. A jet ski cuts across the bow of a speeding boat. A potentially deadly collision is narrowly avoided. This is just the kind of accident that the Coast Guard says kills hundreds of people a year. In fact, Texas leads the nation in fatal boating accidents. The Coast Guard says in the year 2000, there were 219 boating accidents, and 45 of those resulted in 55 deaths. These grim statistics show that roughly 1 in 4 boating accidents in Texas results in a fatality.
Pull up here beside the boat.
Dallas police who patrol this lake say speed and inexperienced boaters are a dangerous and potentially deadly mix.
It did happen in a blink of an eye. He was there and then he wasn't. He was alive and then he was dead.
That's just how fast a fatal accident can happen. Mary Martinez's husband, Marty, was knocked off his anchored boat by the wake of a speeding boat. As a veteran skipper and lifelong lover of the water, Marty became Lake Texoma's first fatal boating accident victim of 2002.
Because of someone being, not being cautious, they've taken the life of my husband, and my life has changed forever.
As thousands of boaters take to the water this Memorial Day, Mary has some advice and wants people to realize Marty is not just a statistic.
He was a real person. His life was taken by a very careless act, and to remember it could be them.
Now, if you think Texas has this dubious distinction because of its size, consider this. California's boating accident fatality rate is only 5%. Florida's is less than 4%. Texas, on the other hand, 23%. Nearly 6 times as much as Florida and California. On Lake Ray Hubbard, James Rose, Fox 4 News.
Prosecutors in the Arthur Anderson obstruction of justice trial say their most critical witness is pleading the fifth. One of the accounting firm's lawyers, Nancy Temple, notified prosecutors by mail that she will invoke her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Prosecutors did not find out until 4 days after the trial started in Houston. Accounting troubles exposed Enron, and now Enron workers are exposing themselves. 5 former employees posed for Playgirl magazine's cameras today, bearing all in a Houston photo shoot. Playgirl editors say the men were offered more money than the value of their stock options. The photos will run in October.
NASA announced plans today to recruit more teachers to fly in space, hoping to have an educator in each new astronaut class. California teacher Barbara Morgan is expected to fly on the space shuttle, possibly in 2004. Teacher Krista McAuliffe was chosen to be the first teacher in space, but she died in the 1986 Challenger explosion. Barbara Morgan was McAuliffe's backup. Two people are dead and at least 50 injured after a suicide bombing in Netanya, Israel. Police say a bomber dressed as an Israeli soldier blew himself up at a market. The attack ended a brief period of relative calm inside Israel.
East Timor is the world's newest nation. Independence was declared after the United Nations ended its 2-year administration. A flag representing the new republic was raised during the ceremony, which marked the end of centuries of foreign rule.
A group of 5 American women tackling Mount Everest has turned back this weekend, just short of the summit. Health problems and bad weather forced Team No Boundaries to turn around 285 feet from the 29,000-foot summit. This was the first attempt to climb the mountain by an all-woman team.
A Busch Gardens zookeeper whose arm was bitten off at the elbow by a lion a week ago went home from the hospital today. Doctors from Tampa General Hospital say they were not able to reattach the 21-year-old's arm. The zoo says she was handling meat when the lion ripped it off. Ahead on Fox 4 News, think you need 8 hours of sleep to feel well rested? Think again. A new study shows getting too much sleep could be deadly.
This is a giant game of playing chicken and being bullies.
What does it take to make a movie a blockbuster hit? We'll talk with the marketing mind behind James Bond and Jerry Maguire to find out. He can't say when or where, but Vice President Cheney says he's certain the U.S. will be the target of another terrorist attack.
No one felt like he or she was safe. And of course, we had everything locked and we had our guns handy.
And it's our all-time favorite case from the Tex Files, the haunting mystery of the Phantom Killer from Texarkana.
Bringing you more local news than any other station in Texas. Fox 4 News continues.
The Bush administration believes the U.S. will be the target of more terrorist attacks.
Vice President Dick Cheney says he can't say when or where the attacks will happen, but he is certain that they will. Fox reporter Molly Henneberg has details.
Another homicide bombing in Israel, this one in Netanya at a fruit and vegetable market. Shortly after the attack, our State Department released a statement saying the U.S. remains, quote, intensively engaged in the Middle East to end the terror and restart political negotiations. On Fox News Sunday, Vice President Dick Cheney said it's difficult for Israel or the U.S. to have a 100% perfect defense against terror.
The Israelis have got maybe the best intelligence service in the world. They've got a very narrow target to focus on geographically and in terms of who their adversaries are, and yet suicide bombers get through.
The vice president also confirmed reports that al-Qaeda may be planning another attack against U.S. targets.
It could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, it could happen next year. But they will keep trying, and we have to be prepared.
House Minority Leader Dick Gephardt says we weren't prepared for the attacks on September 11th, and he's calling for the formation of a new commission to analyze what the government knew before those attacks and to suggest better ways of distributing intelligence information in the future.
9/11 was a failure. The government failed. We all failed. And we owe it to the families of these victims and to future potential victims of terrorism that we do everything we can to make sure this never happens again.
The vice president says that any investigations need to be done in a way that, quote, protects and preserves our methods of collecting intelligence information. In Washington, Molly Henneberg, Fox News.
The latest release in the Star Wars series is a big hit with moviegoers, but it's the marketing behind the film that makes it a blockbuster.
Being a marketer in the motion picture business is like a constant state of nervousness.
Next on Fox 4 News, we'll take a look at the hype that studios use to hook you on a movie.
And it spawned a dozen B-movies, the case of a serial killer attacking young teens on Lover's Lane, the haunting mystery of the Phantom Killer, and tonight's Text Files.
Right now, my life is messed up.
For the past 4 months, Enrique Alonso has been held behind bars on an immigration charge. The FBI believes he may be the key in solving the fake drug cases involving the Dallas Police Department and people falsely accused of selling drugs.
There's dozens of cases connected to you.
In his second exclusive interview with Fox 4 News, Alonso holds nothing back.
Did you ever put any fake drugs in their cars?
Find out Alonso's role in the fake drug cases that landed him and 2 other informants in jail and forced the Dallas police chief to suspend 2 veteran undercover narcotics officers.
The 2 suspended officers, do you think they're dirty cops?
Monday, hear what the key drug informant says from behind bars about the dozens of people wrongly accused, the fake drugs, the missing police money, and much more. It's an interview you'll see only on Fox. Rebecca Aguilar, Fox 4 News.
Serving Dallas, Fort Worth, and all North Texas from the news station. Fox 4 News continues.
You know, for years, 8 hours of sleep has been considered the ideal amount for healthy living, but a new study shows otherwise. In fact, research suggests that too much sleep could be harmful to your health. Dr. Stan Winokur tells us less sleep could add more years to your life.
Make sure we got all the VIN numbers right here.
Starting a new business is enough to keep anyone up at night. 55-year-old Dennis Baker and his partner, Paul Skakem, have just opened Street Eagle of Atlanta. They exclusively rent Harleys.
We're here 12 to 14 hours a day. By the time you go home, spend a little time with your family and wind down a little bit. I'm probably averaging 4 hours a night.
But Dennis admits he's never been a big sleeper.
If I can get 4 or 5 hours of good sleep, sound sleep without being disturbed, I can go without any problems.
Paul's not much better.
Typically 6 or less.
Paul says he feels bad if he gets too much sleep.
If I spend more than 7 hours in bed or 7.5 hours, I hurt. My body hurts, my back hurts, and I just don't feel, I sort of drag through the day.
But Sally Harbaugh is just the opposite. She's miserable if she doesn't get at least 8 hours of sleep.
I can go a couple of days, just maybe on 6. But then I'm just so tired and my eyes start burning and I just feel bad. Come on.
Sally knows that she's in the minority, that not many people sleep 8 hours a night these days.
A lot of my friends who are very busy, you know, with jobs, work, whatever, I mean, they stay in a constant state of exhaustion. I mean, it's just a way of life for them.
So who do you think has healthier sleep habits? Sally, who feels sluggish without 8 hours of sleep? Paul, who feels better with 6? Or Dennis, who averages a little over 4 hours a night? According to a new study, it's Paul. Researchers in California studied over 1 million people for 6 years. They studied their sleep habits and their health. And what they found is that people who slept too much or too little died younger. Getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night increased the risk of early death 12 to 34%. At the short end of the stick, getting less than 4 hours of shut-eye increased the risk by 15%. It seems that people who lived the longest only slumbered 6 or 7 hours a night.
The risk for people who sleep 9 or 10 hours is similar to the risk of moderate obesity.
Dr. Daniel Kripke and his team concluded that sleeping that much is a risk factor for cancer, as well as heart disease and stroke.
What?
Sally Harbaugh, who needs at least 8 hours of sleep, thinks that's outrageous.
I don't believe it. I just simply don't believe it. But I have a chance of dying sooner than somebody that gets less sleep than me.
And a lot of sleep doctors agree with her. They say the research is flawed, and it may be sending people the wrong message.
I think to draw conclusions as potentially significant as extra sleep contributing to mortality, I think is improper and I think inaccurate.
Atlanta sleep specialist Dr. Michael Lacey takes issue with the study for several reasons. Number one, it relied on people's memories of how long they sleep rather than scientific documentation. And researchers did not look at whether participants had medical conditions that might explain their increased risk of death.
It didn't really go into whether the reason they were sleeping longer was because they were on medications for other illnesses, whether they were sleeping longer because they had some type of undiagnosed sleep disorder or problem like sleep apnea or that sort of thing.
Dr. Lacey says that sleep's an individual thing. Some people do well on more, others on less.
People really shouldn't change their pattern or amount of sleep because they're worried that it might lead to an increased mortality.
Give us a call back. Dennis Baker agrees. He says his sleep habits work for him, and he's looking forward to a long life.
I feel good. I think I have aged well, and I've done it on shorter periods of sleep.
That was Fox's Dr. Stan Whitaker reporting. According to a recent poll, American adults sleep 7 hours a night on average during the work week. Only 35% of us sleep 8 hours or more per night.
Well, Star Wars blew away the competition at the box office this weekend.
I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, took in just over $86 million, the third highest debut ever for a three-day weekend. Last week's leader, Spider-Man, fell to second place. Unfaithful About a Boy and The New Guy round out the top 5. Well, behind every great movie is a great marketing team, creative people who are paid to get you hyped. As Frank Buckley shows us, the art of marketing movies and movie making go hand in hand.
It's one of the most successful film franchises ever.
Bond. James Bond.
The James Bond series of films have spanned 4 decades, and the man responsible for getting us into the theater to see this one, the next Bond film, coming out in November, is a guy who may be just as important to Bond's success as the super spy himself.
Levin. Bob Levin.
Levin is president of Worldwide Theatrical Marketing and Distribution. For MGM, the company that distributes the James Bond films.
As you enter the summer season, as a marketer, is it a nervous time, an exciting time? Being a marketer in the motion picture business is like a constant state of nervousness.
Because a film's success is often judged on a marketer's success in getting audiences into the theater, especially on its opening weekend.
This is a giant game of playing chicken and being bullies.
And Levin says the big films on the block with the big stars or the big hype try to pick the best opening weekends first.
And you can get out and declare a big date first. You sort of wait around and say, did I scare them off? And let me really have this date all by myself? And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't.
Levin knows that as well as anyone in the business. His previous credits range from The Lion King to Pretty Woman to Men in Black to Jerry Maguire.
Show me the money!
Studios spend a lot of money marketing films, $31 million on average per feature.
We do engage in a lot of information gathering versus just, you know, 3 of us sitting in a smoky room going, well, I think that's pretty good. You know, it's much beyond that.
In the case of the Bond films, promotional tie-ins play a big role.
Briefcase. Shows a Heineken in 0.4 seconds.
Products that appear in the film help to promote it. In the last Bond film, BMW launched a new model.
But in the next Bond picture, James Bond will not be driving a BMW. This time, MGM is putting him in the same kind of car driven by the Sean Connery version of James Bond. In Die Another Day, James Bond will be driving an Aston Martin.
But he'll still be the ageless action hero playing at a theater near you. And the marketing man behind Bond,
Levin. Bob Levin.
do his best to get you to see him. Frank Buckley, Los Angeles.
A masked killer terrorizes a small town by murdering young couples on Lover's Lane. It's the basic plot of a dozen bad movies, but it really happened 50 years ago in Texas, and it's tonight's case from the Tex Files.
When dark came, the kids came in. People didn't go downtown too much.
Coming up, the final case from the text files. It's a story you don't want to miss.
Hello again, I'm Mike Ducey, inviting you to join us at 10 for Sports Sunday. Coming up tonight, complete Colonial coverage, post-round reaction from the players, and the announcement of some major changes for next year. That story, plus
16 years of my life was spent here, and they were great years.
Former Cowboys quarterback Danny White returns to the field in Dallas, but in a new arena. We'll have that. The NBA holding its draft lottery. Which team gets the #1 overall pick? Let's just say some of our Texas neighbors are smiling tonight. That, plus the inspirational story of a man and his dream to climb Mount Everest. Did we mention that the mountain climber is blind? Sports Sunday tonight, right at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock. See you then.
From the Forewarned Forecast Center, Fox 4 weather.
What a great weekend across North Texas. Do you realize it's almost been 2 months since we've had a weekend with no rain expected? 71 degrees was a daytime high. We tied a record low this morning when we dropped down to 50. Tied that record in 1983. 84 and 64 are your normals for this time of year. Not quite a record tonight, but it's not going to be far from it. The full forecast is coming up in just a few minutes.